question that I want you guys to answer today for our attendees are, how has Mexico attractiveness as an exploration investment destination evolved or decreased in recent years? And what has been its impact on exploration activities, strategies, and results? And I would like Jennifer first to answer this question.
I guess for me, over the kind of long haul, it's sort of gone up and down, but recently I think down a bit. I think particularly from just a bit of confusion and difficulties with having sort of clear processes in place for certain aspects of the exploration and mining cycle. And I guess for me, one of the things that's really impacted the ability to explore and explore effectively is the current moratorium on being able to have concessions granted or being able to relinquish the concessions. And I think that is really hard, but to some degree, there may be a positive that has come out of that, in that it forces companies to be more strategic with the ground that they take and how they assemble packages. It also forces spending sometimes on pieces of ground that a company would perhaps rather surrender and sort of move on to something that might be more prospective. So I guess for me, as a sort of geologist and explorationist, that's been really challenging.
Thank you. John Mark, your thoughts on this?
Patricia, it's great to have you moderating this. You know, you've worked with me now for 15 years, and over these 15 years, we've seen good times and challenging times working in Mexico, as you know, Patricia, and you've helped us through so much. And right now, we actually are running a number of amparos with you and your team to try to force the issues to get titles, to get the items that Jennifer has talked about. And unfortunately, over the last decade, we've definitely seen it more difficult. Mexico has been a leader for mining for so many years. And recently, as Jennifer pointed out, some of those challenges and some of the others include actually the VAT tax as well, not getting back your IVA. Other challenges is requiring everyone now to be employees instead of contractors. These different things are something the Mexican government is trying to do, but it makes Mexico generally less attractive for investment. I'm calling you right now from Zurich, Switzerland, where I'm here meeting with investors, and they're asking me, we can invest in other places. Why invest in Mexico? Why is Mexico not a favorable jurisdiction if we can't do these different things? So I think the future could be better. I think that maybe we will be able to get through these different challenges, but I think it's actually become more difficult over the years. And we've been unable to deploy over $22 million that we've had earmarked and funded by major companies. We operate for BHP. We've operated for other major companies. In fact, they left working with us and in Mexico simply because we were not able to deploy the capital. So we had the money lined up and we would have been able to develop more projects in Mexico, create more jobs, work with ESG, definitely help the environment and do positive things. But because we weren't able to operate rapidly, each year we lost that access to that capital that had been earmarked. So I really think the future, if Mexico does wish to see more jobs, more creation of value, more creation of infrastructure, the mining industry is a great place. And this forum is fabulous to be involved. So thanks a lot. And I really think the future could be better. And I'm hopeful of that. I've written up for the last 5 years in the forum books. I've been interviewed and pointing out these challenges over the last 5 years. So hopefully the next book, when I'm interviewed again, will be more positive based on us having had successes in deploying of over $6 million of capital that we have earmarked for the next 4 months, if we can get the titles.
Couldn't agree with you more. So now, James, I guess that it's your turn.
Right. Well, so I guess I would start by saying that I agree with my friend John Mark 100%. Let me just make a couple of comments I think that would sort of reinforce and maybe add to a couple of things that John Mark just said. First of all, I think it's important for everyone to realize, and even the people involved in the mining business, to remember and reassess and just take note of the fact that mining issues change very slowly over time. Decisions from the government and from regulators, they do have an impact right now, but more importantly, they have an impact for months and years into the future. And I think that right now, Mexico continues to enjoy an understanding in the marketplace that it's a good place to do mining business. Unfortunately, that impression is based on the reality that was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And the reality that is today, with the problems of getting, as Jennifer mentioned, concessions worked out and let go and having them restarted. As John Mark pointed out, not only the value-added tax, but all kinds of other tax considerations. All of the new implementation and relooking and assessment of the new labor laws. These things will have impacts on Mexican business and Mexican mining and the investment, the outside investment in Mexico for a long, long time. The governments always want the mining companies to be responsible in our interactions with the communities and with the people, our employees. But I think that really has to be a two-way street. The governments and the regulatory authorities have to be responsible in their implementation of these new ideas and rules and regulations and laws. Just following up on that, I'd make one more point, and that within the basis of what we're talking about, perception is reality. Perception becomes reality. And whereas the perception today was affected by the realities 10 or 15 years ago, the new realities of what we're talking about and what we're experiencing as mining companies trying to do work in Mexico, that will become the reality for a long, long time. And part of that perception, I note that McEwen Mining has made a determination that they are willing and able and happy to do mining business in other jurisdictions, not in Mexico. I note that, and I'm not speaking for these companies, I'm just as a casual observer of some of the other mining decisions that are being made. Company like First Majestic, and Mr. Newmar had as his mantra for many years, one country and one metal. Well, they just bought a substantial mining asset in Nevada. That is a huge statement. It's a huge statement for their company, but I think it maybe even speaks more profoundly towards what people and the investment community are thinking right now about the changes in Mexico. So I think I've said my piece, and happy to yield the floor, Patricia.
Thank you very much, James. I really appreciate your comments. We're going to get back to that on one of our questions later on. It's something that needs to be discussed, certainly. So finally, Mike, your thoughts and ideas for this question?
Thank you, Patricia. I certainly echo and I agree with my my colleagues here with regards to the comments. And yes, certainly some aspects are quite difficult, I suppose, in terms of the attractiveness as an exploration destination. But I do know it as in my capacity as CEO of Vizsla, we've invested a significant amount of money into specifically the state of Sinaloa. We've now raised over $110 million for Vizsla for investment into the Panuco district, which is an old silver mining district in Sinaloa. And we've been very kind of we're aware of the challenges, but of course you need to look at the broader industry and look at are there other jurisdictions in the world that are really getting much better. As a whole, I think globally it becomes more and more difficult to operate in this business. I still see that there's significant amount of attractive opportunities and excitement around new discoveries from my vantage point here at Vizsla. But stepping back as well to the other group that I lead, which is called Inventa Capital, we've made investments throughout British Columbia, other jurisdictions, Australia. The whole world is getting more difficult to operate in this business, and I still very gratitude and enjoy working in Mexico, although there are certainly challenges that we need to improve on. So.
Right. Yeah. I guess we're all on the same page then. So that leads to another of our questions today, and it's for all of you, based on your experience, of course, in Mexico and out having projects in Mexico, which strategies, priorities, processes, and technology choices do successful exploration companies in Mexico have in common? What would you think they have in common? And then, John Mark, could I ask you first?
Well, I think what Michael commented on is right on. One of the things we have in common is if we actually have the mineral title. I think one of the great places that Mexico has a wonderful step, and it's so fabulous to see what's happened as well with G Silver, where getting an existing district and turning around the Cubal mine. So I think what Mexico has is historic mining. And I think what Mexico has the potential for is developing these old known resources. So Riverside has actually switched our focus. So we've turned over now in the last 4 months, been able to acquire 3 new projects. In the last year, we've acquired 10 new projects that are actually existing by third parties. So I think in the past, we were trying to develop new discoveries, to bring new giant districts, to find the next Cananea, because we really know those are there. But right now, that doesn't work. So the strategy that does work is developing known locations. So Riverside has used our 72,000 location database to focus in the state of Sonora, Sinaloa, Durango, which are 3 quite favorable mining states, not throughout the whole country, and to develop known larger concessions that we could get the title for, and which we actually have the title for. And we're deploying capital ourselves now and partner capital. And I think what really works is drilling. You can drill a lot, and it's exciting to see. So we actually have over $6 million of partner funded drilling happening in the next 6 months on our existing tenures. We do wish to make these projects much larger. We do think the institutional investors want to see giant district plays, but we can make discoveries and create the value right now on existing tenures. That's the strategy we're seeing is really working with others and for Riverside. Thanks for the question.
You are very welcome. Thank you for your answer. And James.
Again, I guess I would echo John Mark's comments, but where John Mark has been very, very specific about what he and his company are doing. I think I'll go up to 25,000 feet and just sort of observe what John Mark and many other companies are doing. And I think that John Mark and Riverside are an excellent example of persistence. If you're looking for one thing that these companies need in Mexico to have success, I think is persistence. It's very easy to get distracted by the latest problem of the day, whether that is some of the regulatory and environmental regulatory and concession regulatory and various labor laws. All of this stuff is, at the end of the day, I hope, is noise. Things in the mining business always take a long time. I think that they can even take a little bit longer, or maybe simply require a little bit more patience and due diligence in Mexico. But I think the successful companies, you can talk about the list that you had, Patty, about different techniques and ways to look at this and that. I think the most important element in that is persistence.
That is true, James, and you know this very well because our recent experience in El Cubo. So yeah, that's pretty much exactly and accurate. So now, Mike, what do you think?
Thank you, and James, that persistence, that's an excellent. I think that's it's one of the main qualities that I think every successful mining company has to have. Really, I mean, it's such a difficult business, and persistence is rewarded certainly. But from the Vizsla point of view and from my point of view, and what I see as a common trait with groups that are successful in exploration in Mexico, I think, as having that perspective of being a guest in the country, at least as a foreign country, as a Canadian, based company with the majority of kind of our senior management and our board being Canadian or not local to Mexican. I think it's important to kind of approach as a guest of the country, and that means kind of an approach that includes shared benefits, shared values, ensuring that the communities that you work in, represented in the strategies and the plans that you make, and whether that goes from as far down the curve of exploration as drill programs, but all the way to mine development and opportunities to benefit the communities that you work in. I think that's something that I've seen, and we try to do our best at Vizsla to have that those internal values of shared benefits and approaching the business as a guest in the country of Mexico.
Correct. Yeah, that is so right, Mike, and your comments are very insightful. And so I guess it's settled. After the panel ends, I'm going to incorporate Persistent Mining Company Mexico as her next endeavor. Jennifer, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think to start, I think really to sort of sum up what everyone has been saying is that it seems like companies who are sort of in for the long haul and have been around operating in Mexico have learned the culture of diplomacy there, have learned over time what are the issues and how to deal with those, and are just really serious about their commitment to making exploration and mining work in Mexico. Seem to have be the people who have this staying power that we're seeing now, and the ability to deal with the changing operating environment and deal with the changing regulations, and kind of get creative with how to proceed. And I think also companies that are communicating with their peers and other companies and just really sort of partnering with other companies or collaborating with them, or even just speaking with them about what properties they have. How do we kind of shuffle things around, as John Mark was saying, and say, okay, we're going to go to a historic mining district, but we need to consolidate a land package so that we can do sort of mineral systems exploration and really kind of find what those historic miners missed. I think being able to have that open dialogue and sort of kind of everyone working in the same direction is definitely a thing that is a recipe for success. And exploration and mining is not a zero-sum game. Like a win or a good drill result for one company kind of boosts all of us. And I think, just people who have managed to kind of stay the course and learn from it, and then kind of work together to bring us all towards the discoveries and production.
Most definitely, it has to be that way, and it's great that you guys are considering these new ideas and this new way to do processes, do new policies in your companies, and definitely we have to, as you said, Jennifer, come together as one industry moving forward. So for our next question, I think that this is also because you guys have a participation in other jurisdictions as well. And that means that the technologies that you are applying in other jurisdictions may be imported into Mexico, which is fantastic. And I've seen it over the years that technologies from other jurisdictions that are actually working there and are more environmental sustainable and other sustainable matters are imported into Mexico, and that are now practices in Mexico. So for you guys, which technology trends are potential game changers for exploration, and how can they influence exploration risk, sustainability, and bankability, which is now very important for all companies, but of course for exploration mining companies. So I would like to begin that answer with Mike this time. Mike?
Well, I think one of the major technology changes that we've been able to implement, matter of fact, we're on it right now, is Zoom. Video conferencing. It's been such a historic time with with the restrictions on travel, and then how do you effectively manage the spend of exploration dollars, or manage 10, 20, 100 people in different jurisdictions, even in Mexico alone, different areas of Mexico. So obviously it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek response, but this type of rush towards video conferencing and communication technology has been impactful. The other thing, I'm not I don't have a technical background, so I'm probably not the best to answer all this, but I would note that I think developments like dry stack tailings certainly are going to influence how we mine plan and how that impacts sustainability as well too. Like that's those are topics that someone with more experience perhaps in engineering can elaborate on. But specific to Vizsla, what I think is exciting, for our Panuco district is the ability for us to use EM surveys and electromagnetics as a tool to find new hidden veins in a district basically that's been in production for over 400 years, and as well, the vein signatures and footprints, are well known in the history of the district. But what we found actually works for us because of the nature of some of the mineralization in the district. We've actually been able to use electromagnetics to find new discoveries of precious metals and base metals, which is really quite exciting for us. And so taking it to a specific level of Vizsla, that's something that I can touch on. But I think this is probably I'm excited to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Great, very interesting. Thanks for sharing your experience at Vizsla. And now, James, what about Guanajuato Silver and Otubo?
Well, once again, I'm just going to stand on the shoulders of giants. I'm just going to expand on what Michael just said. I think Michael's comments are quite specific to Vizsla, but I think it's an excellent comment and a good segue into what I would say, because I think that the one thing that outside companies from Mexico, the companies from Australia and Britain and the United States and Canada can bring to Mexico is maybe a broader look at mineral systems and models of mineral systems that a lot of our Mexican engineers and geological people maybe don't have the experience with, because a lot of excellent Mexican talent stays home and therefore doesn't have that experience of different mineral systems, different models that maybe they're not used to yet. And I think that there's a number of examples in Mexico today of big systems that maybe were looked at peripherally by people either 400 years ago or 40 years ago or 4 years ago, and that today we can maybe have the knowledge of differences. And also the other thing that Michael touched on, which I think is very important, a lot of times I think that the application of geophysics and real cutting edge modern geophysics in Mexico is sometimes overlooked. It makes sense. A lot of times in Mexico, you're staring at a vein. Therefore, well, why would you want to do any geophysics over top of it? But I think that using modern geophysical tools and techniques, it is just a tool, but I think it's generally underutilized in Mexico and can be expanded on in order to expand mineral resources.
Great, thank you. Thanks, James, for sharing this. And what you say, it's very interesting, and it's so true that the talent in Mexico stays local, and it would be a great idea to have this exchange of Mexican talent to, as you said, see another mineralizations in other countries, because although they will learn for sure what needs to be done, it would be preferable to have them have the experience in another jurisdiction. So that's a wonderful idea. Jennifer, what do you think about being a geologist? You must have some very interesting thoughts.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of things I would like to touch on. And particularly, I think for me, one of the things that really could sort of shift the accessibility of exploration and kind of a push towards discovery is getting access to the pre-competitive data that exists. Like, we know that this data, geophysics, like so much data, mapping, all of this kind of stuff exists in great detail in the SGM. And there was a brief period of time a number of years ago where this was all easily accessible and downloadable in kind of its original format from the website. And countries that have fantastic pre-competitive data sets like Australia and Canada, it's something that really, it makes it accessible for anyone to be sitting on their computer and just download and just really start doing project generation, targeting, this kind of stuff. And you could be a student at a Mexican university and just, there's free GIS software now that you can watch a YouTube video to figure out how to use. Like, having this data accessible to everyone is something that would really drive forward this sort of exploration and discovery possibility, and make it just more accessible to people in general. And I have had a very large struggle learning how to get the data, and you know, it was really challenging and it was quite expensive. And now we just have kind of a small piece. But in Australia, I can go on and I can download the entire gravity or magnetics or AMT or any kind of surveys that have been done, historic drill holes that have been submitted, like freely and in moments, and really start to access that. And I think that's something that it would be great if we could sort of help encourage the government to make that accessible again, in a way that facilitates people's access and actually using that data. And the other thing is, I've spent a lot of time working in Australia, and one of the things that has really been happening here and really driving discoveries is exploration undercover, and particularly unconsolidated sediment cover. So things that are now kind of fields that are next to these blocks of exposed rock in Mexico. And this is going on in Arizona and other sort of all through the basin and range there. But I think in Mexico, you know, getting people familiar with how do you explore undercover, stepping off of these blocks and then into these covered zones, using these geophysical techniques that the guys are talking about, and using sort of unconventional geochemistry. Guys like Dante Aguilar doing plant sampling, all of this kind of stuff, and fine fraction, and just really getting the value that presumably these veins, you know, there's a block here that's exposed and a block here that's exposed, and they both have veins. This part that's down dropped, presumably there are veins there too, right? And then so how do we bring that in and unlock that value? I guess one of the things that is going to potentially need to shift is also the ability to pick up ground that currently isn't held, because a lot of that ground is not held. It's kind of moose pasture, if you will. So I think a combination of things there, but that's my take on this question.
Great, thank you. I see I knew you had some very good experience to share with us, so that's fantastic. Now, John Mark, please go ahead.
Now, everyone actually has brought up a whole bunch. I really like what Mike was talking about, is about the ability to look at computer and computerization. One thing we really find is the leapfrog, the ability to put together data. Jen was talking about data. Riverside, luckily, comes out of a compilation of all of that historic data. We have 7 or 8 or 10 terabytes of data. We actually do have the data that was downloaded from the SGM. We used to hire 6 to 8 students all the time. Michael Connor was working with us at the time in Riverside, and it was a lot of fun, and we were downloading all of this data. So Riverside has that data, and Jen's exactly right. That's really important. And the odd thing about Mexico, unlike other countries, it isn't available broadly, but we have been able to put that together using AI, using the technology, using machine learning, and having a full-time GIS person, Ben Connor, has been great. You know, Ben's awesome to work with. He's been with me from day one. Before I could pay myself, I paid Ben, and the guy's really able to model up the data, and I think that's great. What James was talking about is so true, is about geophysics, and it really does going undercover. And we're doing that. We're working with BHP as Riverside, doing large, big geophysical programs. And we have a whole team to get access. I didn't realize how much work we spend. 25% of our total budget just getting the access to do these big studies under gravel cover, underneath the unconsolidated sediments, to look for giant systems. And I think that really is a place that Mexico can make big discoveries. So I think those are 2 things. And the third is getting rapidly new the technology of XRF, X-ray fluorescence on the outcrop, and also being able to tell TerraSpec, telling the mineralogy on the outcrop. We have these handheld devices that we're taking to the field and getting observations that when we're taking to Anglo American, to Newmont, to the major companies, where we're going and doing the same type of tools that we use in other parts, training up our team in Mexico. We have 4 handheld machines in the field, using them on each of the projects. Riverside has 7 projects going at the same time, and we're able to send a lot fewer samples to the assay lab. We're able to do fast recoveries, and we're able to find where the sweet spots. This has been so successful. It's awesome to see how they've been working in that district. And I think these type of tools for all of us are really going to make huge differences. And where in past discoveries, in past districts, we can now expand them. And so those are some of the tools I think are happening worldwide, but Mexico is a great place to apply them. There's so much exposure in Mexico. We don't have too many trees. We don't have too much glaciation. We don't have too much glacial cover. Mexico's got vast, and these tools are great. Thanks for that. That's awesome to be part of this panel.
Thank you, John Mark. Thank you for your enthusiasm. And it's always a pleasure being a part of your consultant team. The Riverside, it's a company, one of the many companies in Mexico that is doing a great job in their projects and communities. So it is great to be part of your consultant team as BHG. So our next question, I guess, for me, if I read it, is the easiest question to be answered for you guys. And I guess this is where it will take couple of more minutes for us to discuss, because it's certainly one of the things that probably we're seated here today and chatting about the exploration and the importance of the exploration companies in Mexico. But of course, we have to talk about the things that are still not quite well and are still things that are putting down not only exploration, but creation of new projects and opportunities. So my next question is, how is foreign investment affected by Mexico's lack of certainty and security? And what could be the potential impact on exploration activity? So I guess this time I would like first James to answer this. And so please go ahead and give us your thoughts on this.
Sure. For Guanajuato Silver, within the next couple of months, we're going to be a mining company. And so things change just a little bit. We can't move El Cubo. We can't move El Cubo to Quebec, right? So we're going to be working and living and breathing in Mexico for a long, long time. We do, though, have 7,000 hectares of exploration ground within the greater Guanajuato area. So to your question, Patty, how does all of these challenges, how does it affect our company and other companies in terms of our decision-making process? Is a dollar spent in Mexico, is it on exploration? Is it to the benefit of shareholders and to the company? And we all have to weigh that. With other companies that are more exploration focused, John Mark has experience all over the world. He can take Riverside from here to the moon. And now I know that he has a passion for working in Mexico, but he's also a very experienced and intelligent explorer and businessman. So he can take his company's money and go anywhere. So I think the important, I don't know, one of the answers to your question, do all of these challenges affect exploration in Mexico? The answer is hugely, but slowly. And I think that it's our job, within the mining community, to be able to communicate the slow nature of that to regulators and to policymakers, because a lot of that times those folks, they'll make a change in policy and they'll go, well, no big deal. Riverside's still exploring, right? Hasn't changed their opinion about everything, but slowly those opinions will change. So hugely, but slowly. That's my answer.
Correct. Yeah. No. Well, I agree with you, and also now that I'm going to ask the same question to John Mark, who is very enthusiastic, and we're really happy that he continues betting for Mexico, because, like you said, he could be anywhere. And it's also great that he speaks Spanish almost perfectly. So that's wonderful. That's also great. But John Mark, please give us your thoughts on this, please.
Well, you guys make a very important point. Over half of Riverside spending is now outside of Mexico. Just what James said, we've done. Riverside spun out our lead asset, Capitan Mining. I'm the chairman, and we're developing that, as James and Michael are doing, and as well as Jennifer is doing, in a single asset focused company. And we gave those shares to the shareholders. And we financed that without warrants with the development group to go ahead and build that as a mine. But Riverside ourselves, for the next 3 to 4 years, saw that we need to work. And so we've expanded quite a bit in Canada. We have an active program in Ontario. We find it's much easier to finance. And we've been able to get a 4x on our investment we were able to, within 2 years, develop a portfolio and spin out a whole new venture called iMetals. That, whereas in Mexico, we've been working for over 11 years on Durango, on Capitan. And Patricia, your team has helped us so much in Amparos and working for the Capitan claim and for the other challenges. And we've had to make new corporations, and we've had to change over our staffing. We've had to do so many things in Mexico that we didn't have to do. Jennifer talked about the access to data. The type of data that Riverside has in Mexico gives us an amazing competitive advantage. But you can get that data freely in Canada. So Ben Connor and the team of Riverside that works so well in Mexico easily was able to move into Canada. And so we've expanded in Canada, and we've no longer been able to develop the same projects. And we're being told, Jean-Marc, if you have a project in the United States, if you have a project in Canada, just as James says, so Riverside's continued to be now North America, and we have a large royalty project in Arizona, and we've done quite a bit, and our share price went up when we did that. Actually, once we sold those projects, they were so easy to sell in Canada, they just flew off the shelf. Last week, I had to put out a new press release about the new portfolio that we've now built in Canada again. And so it's so challenging, as James says, that's the reality. And we do, as explorers, have to move. We will take our assets and put them into special purpose companies in Mexico, and those go forward. Those can't be moved. You can't move those. But the new development capital, unless we can get going forward, we have to move elsewhere because the capitalists, the investors don't want to see us not moving ahead on projects. Very important. Good question. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Marc. Mike, this experience, please share with us.
Well, I certainly can see the, from my point of view, it's actually kind of project specific. And, with Visa, we have a clear path and these long dated concessions that we have a lot of certainty around those, but it is difficult if you were to go and look at kind of greenfields or some brownfields exploration. There certainly are these challenges, and Jean-Marc and the panelists have done an excellent job of explaining those challenges. But from my point of view, I think as we progress and de-risk this, production assets that have kind of this timeline and development pathway forward, it is a jurisdiction that we can raise money for, but it doesn't, there are aspects that make it a little bit more difficult. But again, it goes back to what James said, and I feel like a lot of mining kind of comes back to persistence. And I suppose it's a difficult business to raise money for projects. I think that'll always be there, but there certainly are ways to improve the desirability of Mexico as a jurisdiction, and it is around those roadmaps to success, or roadmaps or clarity on next steps, and how do companies, foreign companies particularly, navigate this system and be certain that for every dollar that they put into the ground, or that benefits the country that they receive, some assurance that it isn't wasted, I suppose. So I'm not saying that that's the case, but it is, certainly that is a topic that you get asked when you're trying to go raise money for projects, and the more savvy investors certainly have an understanding of the challenges and the opportunities in Mexico.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you very much. And finally, Jennifer.
Yeah, I think clearly with the sort of royalty scheme and taxes and everything, the Mexican government benefits greatly from sort of mining projects. But what's lacking is sort of clear guidance and like a clear framework for sort of how do you do things like Indigenous or stakeholder consultations in a way that is going to sort of, as a framework, say in Australia or in Canada, where there's a clear pathway to how you do this. And other things like permitting and tenure security, all of these things, I think if they're laid out clearly by the Mexican government and also applied consistently in different places in Mexico, would really help gain sort of investor confidence and also sort of reduce the risk and bring some of those larger companies back into Mexico. In the last several years, so many sort of mid-tier and major companies have stopped operating in Mexico because the risk is too high for them. And these kind of frameworks that are put in place and sort of consistently shown to be applied and respected and kind of honored as a process really builds that kind of confidence for investors and for larger companies who are looking to other jurisdictions where risk has been mitigated.
That is correct. Yeah, I agree with you as well, Jennifer. Well, I guess there's still so much to do. We're still gonna keep giving the fight, the good fight, in any ways. But yeah, certainly I agree that there are many things that the companies shouldn't be doing or spending their money with. Issues that are part of the administration or the information that it's not available for free, and other relevant matters that takes out Mexico from competitive spots in the mining industry anyway. So for my last question, before we begin with the question and answer section, what do you expect to be the main trends in Mexico's exploration activity over the coming 12 months, and why? Can you think about maybe one or two trends that you can share with us? And if I may ask Jennifer to start first, this.
There certainly seems to be a commodities bull market here that's starting up, and I think there is an interest in Mexico, but I think, as we were just discussing, that there is a large risk for certain investors or certain groups to actually enter into Mexico. And I think there may be a surge in sort of smaller junior companies like really trying to give it a go, or sort of spinning out or making these kinds of starts. But I think that like the kind of model that John Mark has at Riverside and really partnering, finding a way to operate in Mexico and to partner with ways to bring in capital and sort of ways to eventually develop these projects. I think that's something that is potentially on the rise. People want to be in Mexico theoretically, but the risk is concerning for them to be there sort of themselves. And so I think a number of companies have expressed interest in saying, okay, well, we kind of want to have a foot in Mexico, and we kind of want to maybe have some type of alliance, but like we can't really operate there. And I think there's a capacity for companies with the right kind of experience in Mexico and sort of with the right people on the ground and really good teams, particularly Mexican teams that have interacted and really collaborated with a lot of expat geologists over the years, and really dialed in those types of exploration and sort of understanding how to do modern mineral systems exploration and sort of partnering with investments and companies who really are keen on the idea of Mexico, but don't have that risk appetite at this time. And I hope that over the next several years, past 12 months, some of the kinks will get ironed out in terms of all of these procedures and processes and build that confidence back so that things can really get off the ground in Mexico.
Yeah, agree again with you, Jennifer. Hopefully that would be the change for the next 12 months and the next years. So now, John Mark, please, can you share your answer?
Yeah, I think actually the next 12 months can be positive. I think that the companies are focusing on key projects, the success that Michael has pointed out, raising over $110 million, the fantastic work that James has done in taking a company that was named for a city and now it's named G Silver and just going ahead so well, I think is a real example. I think working with you, Patricia, is great. You guys are the best. You're awesome. You're very responsive. You have so much work to do. And I think it's really, really good. And I think that in the next 12 months, what we'll see is continued, as Michael says, I really believe that the rest of Latin America, the rest of the Americas is going to fall and Mexico is rising. basically everywhere else is becoming more difficult. And as you look around the planet, James has commented about working. I've had the opportunity to work in 33 countries around the world. I've worked everywhere from Mongolia and the Congo and everything. And I was horrified 2 days ago when the investment fund manager said Mexico was being compared with those type of countries. And I said, well, this is a great time to buy Mexico, because that's wrong. Mexico is a great place to work. It will, in the long term, develop the resources, the ability to have good projects that can move ahead, good metallurgy because of the oxidation. So I think in the next 12 months, we'll see those type of projects moving ahead. We can do low-grade heap leach projects. We can do dry stack tailings, as Michael talked about. But Mexico, because it has so much dry weather, is a fabulous place to develop. And we do have a lot of areas, particularly in the northern half of the country, where we can develop things. So I think in the next 12 months and the next 24 months, Mexico will continue to actually do well. And these other places are just beginning to feel the pains that Riverside has had to get through, and the rest of us have had to get through in Mexico over the last 6 and 7 years. So I'm really excited. I bought more shares of Riverside yesterday, actually, myself. So I'm really excited for the future, and I'm really excited about working in Mexico, and this panel is great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John Mark. You're so very kind, and thank you very much for your comments. Now, James, please give us your thoughts and ideas.
Well, we all love John Mark's enthusiasm and optimism. I am not nearly as optimistic or sanguine as John Mark regarding this. Also, Jennifer's comments about a strong, bull market in commodities, that may or may not be the case, and I think obviously that would help. However, I think we're very much at an intersection, at a turning point for people's and investors' perceptions of investment within the Mexican mining community. I think that over the next, because the question is, what do we expect from the main trends of Mexico's exploration over the next 12 months? I think that people's investment focus in Mexico will be on discoveries that have already been made and have had really good success. I think an outfit like Vizsla and the success that Michael and that team has had on their project, that's not going away, and the market will provide capital to move that project forward. As we could give a number of other examples. However, I think that other outside exploration in Mexico, just because it's a good place to look for metals, I'm sorry, but that's at an end here for the next little while. John Mark, I think your comment and your perception about, well, this being a low ebb for perceptions in Mexico, and therefore we should be bullish. The only thing that I could think of was John Maynard Keynes' comment that in the long term we're all dead. It's in the short term that matters, and I'm not sure. I wouldn't put any money on when that perception begins to turn and move in the other direction. So there you go. That's just a little bit of pessimism, just to balance out John Mark on the panel. I just felt it out that was necessary.
Sorry, I took out my mic. Sorry, that was hilarious, but it is also true. Thank you for your perspective, James. And now finally, Mike, please.
I don't know if I'll be as pessimistic or as optimistic, but I guess I should back up a little bit too. Of course, we're focused on high grade silver and gold in the Panuco district with Vizsla Silver, but we've also announced that we're spinning out a company called Vizsla Copper. Vizsla Copper, we have some copper assets in BC, but my comment here won't be as controversial. But what I do see is that Mexico increasing in importance with regards to the metals that benefit from electrification, like copper, primarily copper. And the reason for that isn't necessarily because Mexico is improving in general. It's improving relative to places in South America where it's become very difficult to acquire, finance, and develop large copper mines. Of course, Sonora, famous for very large laramide copper deposits and large porphyries. So, it's probably the least controversial take, I guess, but it's I just think copper is going to be greater focus in Mexico regarding exploration. Now, how do you get these concessions back out of the government to go explore them? That's another, maybe a bit more difficult and a topic for
And that's where the pessimism comes in.
Correct.
Right, I changed my answer. No.
No, but yeah, I guess it's a conversation that we must have. Like you said, James, we need to also balance. But it is true and correct, everything that you have said. So right now we are going to pass quickly on the Q&A section. So if anyone has any questions or any comments for our panelists today, it would be a perfect time to do so.
And Patricia, there are a couple of questions on the chat box as well. Francisco Diaz had put in one, and I've added one if people care to, but welcome any other platforms that may also be providing questions.
From a Mexico government perspective, what are the 3 largest challenges you are having to resolve for putting into production? 5-year mine life will be started with CIM. So anyone wants to answer this question from John Mark?
Well, I think maybe James would be really good for that question, since James is kind of dealing with it. Let's maybe have James, if he wishes to. He's become the expert.
Sure. Well, that seems like a question very focused towards Guanajuato Silver and our El Cubo mine. The 7-year mine life, and it's a 7-year mine life in our PEA. That's described by the engineers Bear Dolbear in our PEA from a few months ago. However, if you total up, and I had this argument for about 5 minutes with the guys from Bear Dolbear, and then I decided I wasn't going to win it, so I went on to other arguments. But they describe a number of ounces that at our run rate makes 9 years of mine life, and then they talk about a 7-year mine life. So I said, well, hey guys, 1 and 3, that makes 4. So shouldn't we? No, because 9 years is too long a time to discuss in the PEA. So I said, okay, fine. So, but I think that if you look at a 7 to 9 year mine life, we're already actively doing exploration at our other asset called Pinguico. We will be announcing in just the next couple of days quite a large drilling program for El Cubo, which will be principally infill and expansion drilling of the known veins. But there's also, as you guys all know, in central Mexico, and especially in Guanajuato, there are well-known transverse veins in the region. Certainly at El Cubo, they're well-known. When I was driving underground a couple of weeks ago, they're not subtle. Like as you drive through the mine workings, you look around, you go, well, wait a second, what's that structure? Has anybody sampled that? And those structures are well known. They were not exploited or chased after by Endeavour when Endeavour had this asset, principally because Endeavour wanted to run the mill at a higher throughput than we want to, and they were always very, very acutely looking for more tons. And with the narrow transverse veins, you may not get the tonnage, but you will get very, very good grade. So that's going to be a focus on our exploration going forward. So El Cubo has been in production on and off, but mostly on for 200 years. So this notion that we have a short mine life, I do not concede that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your answer. Because we have only a few more minutes, I would like to ask the question, and then if something wants to answer, please feel free to turn on your mic. So this is a good question. What kind of federal initiatives or cooperation would you like to see to facilitate or expand exploration in Mexico? I guess.
Sure, I'll go quickly. I think for federal initiatives. We're trying to work with the states now to try to get their support, because federally, as Jen talked about, we definitely see clarity around Indigenous rules, clarity of title, the concerns that people have that if you do find something, not like Guanajuato that's already been going, or something like Panuco that's already been production, but particularly new projects that we wish to develop, do we feel that we're going to be able to develop it? So clarity and security is one. I think the second thing definitely is the cancellation of ground that's no longer anyone's doing anything with. If we just cancel that, I think that the government would see that 2/3 of Mexico is actually free, unstaked, not being worked, and that would make a big difference. It's not like it's all being held, and particularly the Mexican government has large claims of ground that they're not servicing or doing any mineral exploration on. Just getting rid of those would actually allow for new capital to develop. The Mexican government isn't going to put their own money towards developing those resources, and it doesn't make sense. So I think that's the second thing. The third thing is definitely clarity around, can we actually be more focused in getting some required mineral titles if we give up something or do different things? But we definitely, if we don't have mineral title, we're not going to be able to progress those projects, and it's actually stagnated for everyone. The capital that we can provide, the jobs and the investment that will come from even doing exploration, particularly from mining and all the development steps, is amazingly positive, and all the royalties and everything else that comes to the Mexican government. But if we don't see this movement and clarity around the titles, no one can actually deploy that capital. And so Mexico is losing the opportunity in a competitive. As James said, there's only the short term, as Keynes had pointed out, and we really have to focus on that. In the short term, the capital will not come. So those three things would be fundamental. And if the government can work on all three, and the last one, safety. Physical safety is so important. It gets very dangerous to work, and there's lots of stories, and it's very important to really continually worry and make sure that we're safe where we go to work. We've had some issues ourselves, and I think other companies have, and so we really have to always work on having safe. And me as a CEO, I'm always worried about those calls of things happening, and so safety is so vital. And if we're not safe, then people internationally don't want to come. We don't want to send people out, even in local people that are working in our places, and so we really feel that's a vital aspect as well.
Correct. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more, John Mark. So we only have time for one more question, and I think it's very important for us. So given the current context, how can the exploration process be optimized in areas already concessioned to maximize production results? So yeah.
I guess I'll have a take at that. For me, I think that really sort of using the most modern sort of exploration techniques, and as John Mark mentioned, using Leapfrog, actually starting to model these things. At Defiance Silver's Zacatecas projects, we actually did a surface mapping. There's no surface map existed for the entire property. And what we noticed was that there are faults. And if you model them, you start to see in historic data, and as we targeted the new drill holes, the intersection of the sort of main vein structures and these faults actually has really high grade zones in them. And I think using modern technology and modern mineral systems exploration techniques and all these other tools that John Mark mentioned, like XRF and ASD, and actually really having a data dense environment and using oriented drill core, using 3D modeling, and just really getting that dialed is the thing that's going to actually add ounces and add tons to existing projects that have been historically worked, but maybe not explored in a modern context.
Thank you so very much, Jennifer, for your thoughts on this issue. And to all of our panelists, it has been a tremendous pleasure to being here today with you, moderating this panel. And I'm sure that we're going to hear from you and your companies on the following years. Hopefully, things change for the better, as we all wish in Mexico. And we will continue for sure working with you, given the best opportunities that we can, and developing as much mining projects as we can, because that will be reflected, of course, in the benefit for all the parties involved. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.